Aloha and welcome to the G'day Sally show. I'm Sally Squires, entertaining the world. Now, tonight I'm going to read another story. Well, it's actually two stories from my book Footsteps to Fairy Forest. And you remember that the little girl had found a map, and on the map there was all these footsteps to Fairy Forest. And every time she goes out and she finds another footsteps, then she actually meets another fairy. So we're up to footstep 8. I was still curious about how many fairies I would meet, so I thought I would check my map and see how many footsteps there were on it. To my surprise, it showed 26 footsteps. I figured that there must be 26 fairies, and I hoped that I would meet all 26 of them. And once I did meet them all, I wondered if they would show me where they lived in the forest. Grown-ups had a name for the forest, but since that first day and that first fairy, I always thought of it as Fairy Forest. I was looking forward to seeing them all together and watching them make magic, if they would let me. Footstep 8 on my map was a ring of toadstools, or maybe they were mushrooms. I always find it hard to tell which is which, so I never eat any of them because my grandma has told me many times that some of them are poisonous and would make me sick. Footstep 8's direction was marked as SSE, so that means south-southeast. As I was walking, a large brown mole appeared out of nowhere. He snuffled and snorted his way along beside me, and I thought he might be blind. It seemed as if he couldn't see me, nor could he see where he was going. He kept bumping into my legs and stones along the path, and once he even walked into a tree. I had to pick him up and point him in the right direction, because he kept snuffling up against the tree bark as if he thought the tree would just move out of his way. Suddenly we came to a high brick wall right across the path. It was so high I couldn't even see over it, and it went right up to the tree trunks on both sides. I was just wondering how I would get over it when the mole snuffled up to the base of the wall and started to dig. I had to move out of the way because he was throwing dirt everywhere. He disappeared down the tunnel he had dug, and I was still wondering how I would get over the high brick wall when the mole suddenly reappeared. Funny mole. He snuffled up behind me and started to push, so I thought he must want me to move ahead. He kept pushing me until I had started down the tunnel he had dug. I was bent over, but I could see sunlight ahead, so I slowly made my way through the tunnel and out the other side. Now the brick wall was behind me, so I could get ahead on the path. He came through after me, and we walked along a little way, but then he started snuffling the path in front of us. I looked down at what he was snuffling about, and there, right under his nose, and I guess mine too, was a ring of toadstools. Excitedly, I got out my spade and started to dig a little, and sure enough, there was the stone for footstep 8. I turned around to thank the mole, but he was gone. I sat down on a stone while I waited for, yes, you've guessed it, the next fairy to appear. It wasn't long before a purple and brown flash appeared, and this fairy landed right in my lap. She had brown and white striped hair. She said her name was HEMMINOFFIA, and that she was the fairy of the earth. And then I fell asleep. So now we're going to hear the story of HEMMINOFFIA, the fairy of the earth. One day a wizard and a witch had a terrible argument. The wizard complained to the witch that she was disturbing his birds every night just as they were settling down to sleep. Just after they had all had their daily confab, where they told each other about all their adventures every day, and as they settled down to sleep in all their favourite trees, the witch would fly past on her broomstick and let go with such a loud cackle that her laughter would wake up all the birds. Then the birds wouldn't be able to get to sleep again, and they were all so tired the next day that some of them would fall asleep when they were flying, and they would fall right out of the sky. This really upset the wizard, who was the protector of his group of birds. The witch said she didn't care about his birds, and if she felt like laughing she would, as loud as she wanted to and whenever she wanted to. The wizard worried about what he could do to stop the witch from disturbing his birds. So he decided that he would have to teach the witch a lesson. He got out his spell book and found the right spell, and the next night, just as the birds had finished their confab, he said out loud this spell. Wizardry wonderful wild, wicked witch worries, teach terrific trick, fall from sky quick. As the witch flew through the forest, she had almost reached where the wizard's birds were settling down for the night, when suddenly she fell off her broomstick and landed in a pile of dirt. Her face was covered in dirt, and so were all her witch's clothes and her wily witch's boots. Even her mouth was full of dirt. As she spat out the dirt and picked herself up, she waved her dirty finger at the earth and said her magic spell. Wildly witcheroo wasm, earth everywhere expiring, sour seeds sowing, nothing nice never. The next day, HEMMINOFFIA, the fairy of the earth, was flying around the forest to check on all the earth when she noticed something strange. All the mushrooms and toadstools were shrivelling up. They looked as if they were dying. Even the toadstools and mushrooms in the fairy rings were dying. This is terrible, thought HEMMINOFFIA. I wonder what is happening to all the mushrooms and toadstools. She flew down into the very centre of a fairy ring and listened to the mushrooms and toadstools as they groaned and grimaced. What is wrong? She asked them. Earth is sour, said one of the mushrooms. Not nice to eat, said a toadstool. HEMMINOFFIA was shocked. I must go and see Yesterampta to see if she knows what has turned the earth so sour that the mushrooms and toadstools are dying. She flew as fast as her wings would take her to the shady glade that led to Yesterampta's green grassy meditation mat. She found her floating above her meditation mat with her eyes firmly shut. She waited, as she did not want to disturb Yesterampta's meditative mood. With her eyes still shut, Yesterampta said, You are wondering what has happened to the earth and why all the mushrooms and toadstools are dying. HEMMINOFFIA nodded her head sadly. There has been a terrible argument between a wizard and a witch, said Yesterampta. The wizard is upset that the witch is disturbing his birds, and so he cast a spell on the witch that made her angry with the earth. You see, she does not know that the wizard cast a spell on her which buried her in the earth. She was so furious that she cast a spell on all the earth, stopping things from growing, including the toadstools and mushrooms, which felt the effects immediately. HEMMINOFFIA was sad. She knew that she must cast a spell strong enough to cancel out the witch's curse, and then she must find the witch and the wizard and bring them together to sort out whatever their argument is about. HEMMINOFFIA asked Yesterampta if she would project the faces of the wizard and the witch on a large stone that was nearby, so that she would recognize them when she found them. Once she had seen their faces, she thought, First I must save the mushrooms and toadstools. So she took out her magic fairy wand, which was made of pebbles and palm leaves, and said her magic spell. Unicorn universe unusual. Energize earth expertly. Save sowing success. Plants powerful perfect. As she looked at the first group of mushrooms and toadstools she found in the forest, HEMMINOFFIA could see that they were starting to perk up. And now that she had solved the problem of the sour earth, she set about finding the wizard and the witch to sort out their problem with each other. She flew all around the forest until the sun started to set. It was then that she heard the birds chattering to each other in the trees. Some of them were landing on the arms and even the hair of a wizard who was standing under one of the trees holding a large wooden wand. The fairy flew over to him and perched on his shoulder. Hello, she said. You must be Wingwa Wizard. The wizard looked up to see who was speaking. He screwed up his eyes so that he could see the tiny fairy. Yes, he said, that is I, and to whom am I speaking? The fairy smiled at him. I am HEMMINOFFIA, the fairy of the earth, she said. I believe that you are having an argument with Laughing Loud Lucy, the witch, and she put a spell on the earth which turned it sour. I believe, said HEMMINOFFIA, I believe that you may have cast a spell on her to make her fall out of the sky and down into the earth. She was most unhappy about that. In fact, she was very mad indeed, and that's why she cast a bad spell onto the earth. Now I have been able to reverse her spell and make the earth healthy again, but I must work out a way that you two can get on so this will not happen again. All of the plants and the forest creatures must live with a healthy earth so they can grow. Up in the trees, HEMMINOFFIA could hear the birds starting to settle down for the night. Wingwa Wizard looked up. Well, Fairy of the Earth, if you just wait for a short while, you will meet Laughing Loud Lucy, because she always flies past here just as the birds are going to sleep, and she lets out such a loud cackle of laughter that she wakes them up, and then they can't get back to sleep. That is why I am so angry with her, and why I cast the spell so that she would fall out of the sky and not disturb my birds." And just as he finished speaking, there was a loud whooshing noise and suddenly a loud cackle of laughter. HEMMINOFFIA took off flying to catch up to Laughing Loud Lucy. "Please stop, Miss Witch, I need to talk to you." At last the witch turned around on her broomstick. "You want to talk to me?" she said. "Yes, please," said the fairy. "What can a fairy have to say to a witch?" asked Laughing Loud Lucy. "Well," said HEMMINOFFIA, "it's like this. You might not know it, but Wingwar Wizard cast a spell on you so that you would fall out of the sky. And then you cast a spell on the earth to turn it sour because you've been covered in dirt when you fell. Your spell affected the mushrooms and toadstools so they began to die, and more plants would have died if I'd not reversed your spell." Laughing Loud Lucy looked furious. "So it was that wizard who made me fall into that dirt," she said with a furious gleam in her eye. "I know what I'll do to him." "No, please don't do anything more," said the fairy. "Your anger at him and his anger at you is affecting the forest creatures, and it must stop." The witch waggled her finger at the fairy. "But that wizard can't stop me from laughing whenever and wherever I like," she said. "But your laughter wakes up the birds, and then they can't get back to sleep. Some of them are so tired the next day that when they're flying, they fall asleep and fall right out of the sky, just like you did the other day. And you didn't like falling down and being covered by dirt, did you?" asked the fairy. The witch thought about what the fairy had said. No, she did not like falling out of the sky and being covered in dirt, that's true. Perhaps she was being unfair to the birds. "Well," said the fairy, "perhaps you could fly past the trees where the birds are trying to sleep at an earlier time so that you won't wake them up." The witch thought about her daily routine. She usually slept during the day while the birds were flying around the forest, and then just as they were ready to sleep, she was just waking up to spend the night flying around the forest. "You see," said the fairy, "the birds need their sleep just as you do, so they will have the energy to fly around each day and find food for themselves and spread the seeds around the forest so the plants will grow." Now Laughing Loud Lucy was feeling sheepish. "I didn't realize that," she said. "From now on, do you think that you could be quieter when you're flying past the trees that the birds are sleeping in?" asked HEMMINOFFIA. The witch nodded. Yes, she would be careful not to disturb the birds in future. But she was worried about the wizard casting more spells on her so that she would fall down in the dirt again. "Don't worry," said the fairy. "I will go and speak with the wizard, and I'm sure he will not cast any more spells on you." So the witch was comforted as she flew off to do her rounds through the forest that night. And HEMMINOFFIA, the fairy of the earth, visited Wingwar Wizard, who agreed that he would not cast any more spells on Laughing Loud Lucy. And the birds can now sleep peacefully all night. You know, Hawaii is a microcosm of the world, with people here from all over the world. And Noa Noa Hawaii is a microcosm of the traditional arts of the world, with beautiful patterns from many countries. They've been in business for more than 40 years with wonderful Hawaii-designed batik clothing. Their hand-dyed and handmade clothes have patterns that are based on traditional kapa and tapa designs from Hawaii, Polynesia, Micronesia, Indonesia, even New Zealand and Africa. So check out the wonderful items that Noa Noa has on their website, www.noanoahawaii.com.